Hello, lady. Hey, Mike.
He works harder than anybody I've ever known. All to help the people and organizations that he believes in.
Hello, Nancy.
Sorry, I put my
I've not been able to be speaking with.
Oh.
With
Headphones plugged in. Let's try it again. Hang on.
No, you're fine.
To be able to speak to them. You had a really kind of unique situation.
Hello, Nancy.
Hello. We have one attendee on the phone who's talking on the phone. I don't know who it is, but we'll figure it out when we do roll call.
Okay.
So what I thought I would do is I would also take attendance of which directors are there. They're all supposed to be there, so.
Okay. And then I've received the order,
Yep,
the email from late this afternoon, and the order in which they'll speak.
yep, I sent you
And-
that.
Yep, we've got that. And I'm going to start out with just saying, welcome. We'll call this to order. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain that, we believe that this is in compliance with Colorado state law. This is being recorded. And if anybody has a question regarding this or anything else, they can contact the city tomorrow, but we'll
Sure.
carry forward with our meeting.
Yeah, and then I don't know if you saw my other email, but once we get to the study session piece after public forum, Wade's gonna say a few things, and then he's gonna introduce the finance director, Maria Sabata, and then she's going to give a whole big,
Okay.
and then you'll call on the directors and, oh, I need to make you a co-host. Hold on. There you go.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, so if we run into anything, I will, I'll just defer to you, and between the two of us, we'll work it out. But I'm going to start with basically a statement that says, appreciate everybody being here, et cetera. And, if we need to pause for a moment while we work this out, we'll do this as smoothly as possible.
Okay, I'm gonna switch and see who's on the phone. If it's a director, one of the commissioners, I'll be right back.
Okay.
Nancy,
Hello?
this is Jenny. This
Oh,
is Jenny. How are you?
Are you calling in?
I don't know this is my first Zoom meeting, so I'm not exactly sure what I'm supposed to do.
Okay, you need to unmute. So down somewhere you'll see a button down in the bottom bar. If you hover, there'll be a toolbar that pops up.
Okay.
And you want to hit the microphone so it will unmute you, but you're unmuted. I can hear you. Right next to it, there should be a camera. So if you hit the camera, then we can see you.
Oh, I don't want to be. I don't want to be seen.
Okay, hold on. I've got somebody on the, hold on.
Okay, thanks.
Could the person who is on 303-505-8413 please identify themselves?
That's me. That's me, Nancy. Do I need to hang up?
No, who is me?
Oh,
Oh,
sorry,
sorry, Jenny.
Oh, so you called in. Okay.
I did.
I did.
Okay, I have you as a panelist. Okay, no problem. I moved you. Oh, I got somebody else.
Okay.
Okay.
Started hearing memories and songs.
Unmute and.
Songs that you used to sing around the campfire.
Yeah, yeah. So I wanted to bring him back to all the good
Hey,
times
Sean.
and with
Hi, how's the weather in New York?
and so I just started
It is
singing those
fabulous.
Well, it looks like it.
Hey, Jenny,
Wing it.
Yes.
Yes.
do you have a radio on?
Yes. Let me turn. I'm going to try to mute this phone.
Because he was so proud of us.
I just muted Jenny.
What if I had something on this one?
So Nancy, do you have any insight into what is being resolved on Monday? Apparently there's talk of some things coming out of lockdown a little bit more. Do you know what that's about?
I know that we're going to be following the state order and Tri-County Health. City Manager Lewis can probably respond to that much better than I can.
Okay. Yeah, because it's an interesting time.
It is. So essentially, the way we're interpreting it and still kind of getting some guidance on that is that basically non-essential retail is now able to reopen with some pretty strict social distancing requirements, masking requirements, and that type of thing. So the third floor of City Hall, which is planning, all community development, public works, IT, our office, legal, everything on the third floor is reopening on Monday with about 50 to 75% staff. We've put up shields. Well, on Friday, we'll be putting up shields for staff. We are requiring masks in the building for the next couple of weeks. So yeah, it's starting to very slowly open up, but personal services are also reopening. So you'll see barbershops, salons, and things like that reopen as well.
Yeah, I got no need there, but thanks. Yeah, actually, I've got my barber shop right here. It's a set of wall clippers. I've owned them for over 30 years.
Nice.
Every time I give myself a haircut, it's that much less expensive per haircut.
Well, I cut my own, and you can't really see, but it's not exactly what it should be. So.
Yeah, well, I've never had an opinion regarding another man's hair, so I just feel it's important just to leave that alone. Oh, goodness. Well, what a beautiful day, huh? I think spring is finally here.
Hi, Christine. Hey, Daryl.
Hello.
Dr. Kenton, how are you?
I'm fine, except my couch is getting a little too attached to me.
Yeah. Well, you'll have that.
Yeah,
Well,
my exercise routine consists of getting out and walking
Okay.
about 2 blocks.
That's all right.
Oop, I saw Carl. Oh, there's Carl.
Good evening.
Hey, Wade. Good evening, Carl.
Hello.
Dugan.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Now, did we lose Daryl? No,
I
there
think
you
I'm
are.
still here.
No,
Daryl?
he's still there.
Daryl, I think you're on your cell phone. Your
Yeah.
cell phone is probably in the vertical position. If you turn it in the horizontal position,
Is that better?
yeah, that is like a full-size Daryl right there. Man, oh man. I'll tell you what, you're a good-looking gentleman.
Hey, Kate.
Hello, Kate.
Hold on. I gotta move some people up. Hey, Brad.
Hello.
Hello,
Kate.
Kate. Welcome,
Hi.
welcome, Brad.
Margaret.
Hi, Nancy.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good.
I know everybody's going to find this hard to believe, but if you go to Walgreens and you're looking for a beard trimmer, which half of our audience may at some point, you can't find it because I took the last one yesterday at the Walgreens up at Evans and Downing, just as a point of information.
Good to know.
Exactly.
The future is a barber, Mike.
You know, perhaps, you know, I've often thought of myself as Floyd in Mayberry.
Hi, Michelle. Hi, Noel.
Hello.
Diane
Oh.
and Kate. We have a quorum.
Okay.
Hi there.
Hi.
All right. Do we have everybody we expect, Nancy?
I don't see Judy Brown yet,
Okay.
but everyone else is here.
Okay. And then who do we have under here with the phone number ending in 8413?
That was Jenny, I believe.
Okay. Okay.
Whoa. Wow.
All right. Well, do we have directors on that we think are going to be on?
I do believe so.
All right. Well, let's go ahead.
Go ahead.
I say if we have everybody that we think is going to be here, and it is now 7:00 p.m. Today is April 21st, 2020. This is in fact the P&Z meeting for the city of Inglewood. We're doing something different tonight for anybody who hears this recording or sees this recording. We are recording this. We're doing a Zoom call. This is the first one that I'm aware of that the Planning and Zoning Commission has done. It's our understanding that this in fact is a legal exercise in compliance as noted within Colorado state law. Should anybody have a question regarding this, our recommendation would be that they can contact the city at a later date. This meeting will proceed and all comments will be recorded and available for public. And the public is also invited to this. So as I understand it, that would take care of just sort of some notes to make sure everybody understands what we're doing, why we're doing it. We're all relatively new here, so a little forbearance as we're trying to run the meeting between Nancy and I. And if you could, wave your hand, make sure we've got you so that we're talking not on one another, but with one another. And that's going to really help. So a little bit of pause in between. is going to be good. But first roll of the agenda is to call to order. Next is approval of call the roll, please. Nancy.
Daryl Kenton,
Here.
Michelle Austin,
Here.
Judy Brown, Kate Fuller,
Here.
Kate Townley,
Here.
Noel Atkins,
Here.
Diane Lepovsky. I saw her.
Who was here?
Who was here? We'll come back.
Okay.
Carl,
Here.
thank you.
Muted.
That's all right. We do it all the time. Carl Adams
Here.
and Chair Freemeyer.
Here. We do have a quorum and we're ready to go forward. Did you also want to call for the record the directors that are here to this?
I
this
do,
evening?
please. Yeah,
Okay.
just so we know who's here. So I have Deputy City Attorney Comer,
Yes.
Director Sabata,
Present.
Manager Harga. Is he here? Nope. Director Power.
I am here.
Thank you. Director Brocklander.
Here.
Director Underhill.
Here.
Director DeAndrea.
Here.
Director Van Rye.
Here.
Thank you. I don't see Dorothy. City Manager Lewis
Present.
and Budget Administrator Jenny Nolan.
I'm here on the phone.
Okay, and Judy just came in. Give me a second. I got to get her switched over.
I want to go where Sean is, to Elitch's.
That's the Civic Center. Or actually it's the
Oh,
light
there's
rail
the Civic
station.
Center. Oh, at first it looked like Elitch's, like that tower thing.
No.
Okay, and Judy Brown just entered the meeting, I believe. Judy?
Hi, sorry I'm late.
No, you're fine. So,
Nancy, could I just mention that I do think that, and it looks like everybody does, but all board and commission members have to have their camera on at all times in order to be counted as quorum.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay, members, commissioners, Michelle?
Well, my camera is covered up.
Is that something you could relatively easily, if it's just a piece of tape, could you pull that off, please?
I'll do my best.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. While Michelle is working on that, I believe we've got everybody introduced. We do have a quorum. Let's move forward. Item number 2 on the agenda is approval of the minutes from our March 3rd, 2020 meeting. Would there be such a motion?
Make a motion.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Seconded.
There is a second. Okay.
I'm sorry,
So
who was the second?
It was Kate.
Kate Fuller.
Thank you, Kate.
Okay. So for purposes also, everybody has different sound quality on their computer or their microphones. So if we could all make it a point to speak up, if it's a little too loud for some people, turn your volume down a little bit, but that's so everybody else can hear you. All right, so we do have a motion and a second regarding the March 3rd, 2020 minutes. Would there be any modifications or comments thereof? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Daryl Kenton. Daryl, can you unmute?
Here.
Thank you. To approve the minutes, Daryl? Michelle?
Yes, and I'm having trouble trying to figure out how to make it so you guys can see me, but
Okay.
I'll keep working on it.
All right. Judy Brown?
Yes.
Kate Fuller?
Yes.
Kate Townley?
Abstain.
Noel Atkins?
Yes.
Diane Lepovsky?
Yes.
Carl Adams?
Yes.
And Chair Freemeyer.
Yes. Motion does carry. Michelle, on the video, if you take your mouse and move towards the bottom of your screen, It'll be in the one off of the lower left-hand corner.
Oh, so start video?
Yes, if you just click on that.
Okay. Look, there's my ceiling.
Well, there you are.
There you are.
Oh my goodness. Well, welcome. All right. All right, next item on the agenda is public forum. I'm not aware of any public that is at this particular meeting. If there's any public who would be on this meeting, would you please either speak up or reveal yourself at this point? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the capital improvement projects. What we would like to do this evening, and in our packets, we received a load of information, and we appreciate staff putting this together. It's quite an undertaking, but frankly, it's the most comprehensive presentation and compilation of information that I've seen in my 20 years of public service. So I think we should all give a shout out to staff for putting this together. It's no easy feat. And what we want to do tonight is to give this as much service as possible. Just so we're clear, what we want to do here tonight, we do not need to reach a decision, okay? What we would like to be able to do, staff has gone through, basically, they're going to give us a presentation, and they have taken the projects in their respective departments into a tier 1, 2, and 3, okay? In tonight's presentation, we've asked the directors to give discussion, or pardon me, to have a presentation on tier 1. And the purpose of this is basically, the reality of it is we have finite resources, we have endless wishes and needs. And so as they look at it from a professional standpoint, they're saying, please, let's look at what we need to do. Let's look at what we should do. These are our tier 1s from our respective areas of service to the citizens. And then we'll be able to have each one of them present. I would encourage you to write down any questions you may have, and then afterwards, let's have a discussion on a tier 1. And then if in looking through the packet, there were additional that you'd like to bring forward as commissioners, tier 2 or 3, then let's go ahead and do that at that point. But it seems to me to be, that would be a good way to go. Does anybody have any questions regarding the format? Anything at all? Okay, so with that, we certainly appreciate your forbearance here. The first presenter tonight is Chris Hargoth, who's Director and the Communications Manager. Chris, it's yours.
Mike, could I interrupt real quick?
Yes, please.
I'm actually going to introduce Maria Sabata. She is our Finance Director for the city.
Okay.
And Maria will be giving a little bit more of an overview of the items before you and sort of the monies involved in the ask that the city will be asking you to do in your diligent homework that you've been doing. So I will turn it over to Maria at this time.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for having us to your meeting today. And thank you, Mike, for that great introduction and preface to our discussions tonight. The information that's being shared with you today has been shared with council as well. However, we will have a more comprehensive review with them in the next couple of weeks and hope to bring forth and share some of the conversation that's discussed tonight with them. I wanted to emphasize, as you mentioned, Wade, the funding aspect of this. We currently, in the tier 1 projects that you talked about, Mike, approximately $11 million of requests. The funding going into 2021 that is available is approximately $5.5 million for the CPF and the PIF. So, and for those specific numbers, I'm talking specifically to those 2 funds. So keep that in mind as we're going through the discussion. Of course, the funding for the for other areas that will be discussed are respective to the enterprise or what have you, as it's discussed as we go through the conversation. So will be clear to identify the fund that we're talking about as the directors go through this. The other thing, and I'll end now so we give enough time for discussion regarding the projects. The one item that I wanted to talk about relates to the utilities. So Peter Van Rye is on the phone, and when he gets to his piece, he'll share a little bit about the process we're taking to work towards a plan for the utilities. It's not quite complete, but I'll let Peter share that later. So thank you again, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. Wade, back to you.
Right, thanks. Just want to reiterate for everybody that the directors will be focusing on those tier 1 projects that you saw in your
Michael,
packet.
may I interrupt? When the other people that I'm not that familiar with, could they identify what they like Maria? Is she the director of what? That'd be helpful.
Budget director.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, so certainly appreciate that. Yes, so Wade, if as we're going through each one of the directors, if you could say this is, and they do, or they are the director of.
And sure, just as I was saying, that the directors are going to be focusing on those tier 1 projects in their presentations this evening. And that's really all the comments I had. I want to, again, echo Maria and leave enough time for them to present. So I will let you call the first up, which I believe was Manager Hargath.
Yes.
And I'm going to be presenting on his behalf for his one item.
Okay.
So, may I go ahead?
Please.
Thank you. So the communications department, which is the last few years been part of the city manager's office, is proposing a $200,000 wayfinding and placemaking CIP project. This will involve establishment. Right now is when we just started the design. So we selected a consultant. We had money in the 2020 budget from council who allocated funds to create a wayfinding and placemaking study. So we've selected the contractor. We had a kickoff meeting and then we went into shutdown. But they are creating a design package for gateways for as you enter the different parts of the city. As you know, we have some gateways that are very deteriorated, sometimes non-existent. It will also include vehicular directionals, so to get to things like downtown, the Gothic Theater, the hospital district, city center. And so that, you know, most of the vehicular directionals will focus on Broadway and Hampton, but also in the corridors, any of the roadways leading into the city like Downing and Dartmouth and some others. It will also involve placemaking as the other half of the project, which can be things like, you know, landscaping as you're driving, you know, under some of the overpasses. You know, what does the landscaping or the, you know, public art kind of, how does it communicate and tie back to the image of the city for both beautification purposes, but also to create a sense of place for the community. So glad to answer any questions about that project. And by the way, it would be a phased plan where we would spend, you know, approximately $200,000 per year for a number of years until we had the system built out.
Okay. Why don't we do this for purposes of getting through everybody and respectful to each director? We'll come back for questions. So if you have any questions regarding that, I'd encourage commissioners to take notes, write down questions, and then we'll go to the next director.
And I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself, but I'm Sean Lewis, City Manager. I forgot to do that. Sorry.
Absolutely. And Sean, it's a pleasure to have you here. Next we have Brad Power. Mr. Power.
Good evening, members of the commission. It's nice to see you all again. I see Nancy sharing the screen. I wasn't expecting that, but I'll go on. Thanks for the time. I wanted to talk about 3 pedestrian and bicycle focused projects that are level or tier 1 from the Community Development Department's CIP submission for next year. The first is City Center Santa Fe Drive pedestrian and bike bridge. This improvement would offer a connection to the South Platte River Trail. It would enhance the connections to the redeveloping central part of the city as well from the points to the west. And one of the things it would also do would enhance access to the transit offered by RTD bus and rail lines, which would give them the opportunity to expand their ridership. And it would also provide an opportunity to coordinate with the planned expansion or redevelopment of the city center area. The requests are a couple of years out, 1.2 million in 2023 and 1.2 million in 2024. Shifting south a little bit, the next would be the Rail Trail Segment 1 bridge at Oxford. This would be a bridge over Oxford Avenue intended to enhance pedestrian safety in that area. Again, offer better access to the transit station at Oxford and offer pedestrian improvements as part of an area that is undergoing pretty continuous redevelopment activity over the last few years and planned in the near future as well. That would be, in terms of an assessment of that option, would be $315,000 proposed for next year. And then finally, the final Tier 1 submittal from Community Development is the Rail Trail Segment 1, the actual trail between the Oxford area and Big Dry Creek. That trail connection would connect the regional trail connection of Big Dry Creek Trail and the Oxford Station. It would obviously offer enhanced pedestrian bicycle connections in the immediate area, and it would provide a regional link to the bike system via the Big Dry Creek Trail. That assessment would be $210,000 proposed for 2022. I should mention that all three of these projects were identified in the Walk and Wheel Master Plan, which was adopted by City Council in 2015. And they also represent a joint effort between the Community Development Department and the Public Works Department. Community Development would lead the planning efforts around these improvements, and Public Works would coordinate their actual construction. And that's it for me in terms of the Tier 1.
Okay, excellent. We certainly appreciate that. Again, any questions, we'll come back to these. Next one, we have Margaret Brocklander, who is Information Technology. Margaret?
I was trying to unmute. Thank you. Again, Margaret Brocklander, IT Director. Nancy, I should point out that I didn't know we were only presenting Tier 1, so I'm going to have you skip a couple of them as I go through. So the first one that we have, I'm getting a lot of feedback, is the Workstation Refresh Program. This program is an annual program. It takes place every year.
May I interrupt for just a moment, please? Would everybody check and make sure they only have one source of speaker on? So if you have a phone, please make sure that you're muted on your computer. Okay, so if you're listening on your phone or vice versa, just make sure we just have one speaker in each location. That solves that problem. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think it's important so everybody can hear.
If I may interrupt too, Nancy, is there a way for you to enlarge your share screen so we can see what page you're on?
And if everyone, and I can give page numbers as I go through.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And if everyone that isn't speaking can mute their speaker, then we can make her sound a little bit better when she's talking.
Okay.
Can mute people too.
So the first one is the Workstation Refresh Program on page 174. This is an annual program that we have where we replace a portion of the city's computers, both desktops and laptops, that reach the 4-year mark. The budget for the program is $90,000. Nancy, next project is the IT infrastructure, and this is on page 180. And this program is also an annual program. It's ongoing, and it continues to fund all of our network equipment that we have, all of the equipment that we use for phone system, data, servers, storage, anything that we have that rides along the network. This program replaces yearly end-of-life equipment, so we keep refreshing the network. The request for this project is $150,000. My next two projects, Nancy, are security cameras and disaster recovery. And those are going to be tier 2. So I'm going to go ahead and skip over those two. The next tier 1 project is going to be audiovisual in the council chambers. And the audiovisual equipment, which includes the sound system with the microphones, the projector, all of the sound equipment that we have for projecting out of that room, is estimated to be a little over 20 years old. It hasn't failed, but it is risky. So we do have a project in there to go ahead and update that room. The budget request for this project is $200,000. The next project is fiber. This project is to provide for the installation of high-speed fiber between Civic Center and several of the city's buildings. So the PD building, Pirates Cove, Rec Center, Golf, Allen Plant, Wastewater Service Center, and Maui Center. This is a project that will be spread over several years. We'll have the engineering done on it, and then we'll put the fiber in the ground so that we have connectivity to each one of our buildings and replace the current services. We are currently using both CenturyLink and Comcast to provide communications between the buildings. The funding for this project for 2021 is $500,000. Nancy, we're going to skip over the badge system. The security camera video server is a high priority project. We do have security cameras planned to be implemented in both Maui and the library. Parks, Rec, and Library also has a plan to install security cameras in the Rec Center, and Public Works has a plan to install security cameras at Civic Center. With all of those cameras being installed, we do need to add a security camera server to the system to be able to capture all of that footage. The proposed budget amount for this project is $100,000. And then the last high priority project are monitors. The Rec Center is requesting $9,000 to replace several of the monitors that are behind the customer service front desk with larger monitors to improve the viewability. Currently, the monitors that they have are too small to be effective. Nancy, the last project that I have is a tier 3, so we're going to go ahead and skip over that one.
Certainly appreciate that. Thank you. Next, Christina Underhill, Parks, Rec, and Library.
Hi, everybody. All right, so I did it a little different with the sharing of our projects. Since we have quite a few throughout the plan, I have it off the main pages. I'll go through each of our projects so you can see how it's spelled out. So the first one is the Bellevue Children's Train maintenance. Obviously, when we're open for season, that gets a lot of usage and it needs annual maintenance done to it. Not only the train itself, but the track. We need new railroad ties put in quite often. They wear out, beautifying the train station. And so we have around 16,000 to complete maintenance on that. And that's on page 22 of the plan if you want to see further details on those. The next one listed there is our Rec Center and Maui fitness equipment replacement. Obviously, at Maui and the Inglewood Recreation Center, we get a lot of membership and a lot of usage at both locations. And to keep this equipment safe and functional, we do have some funding there, about $53,000 to replace equipment as needed. And we do monitor that, and there is life expectancies on most of the equipment that we do purchase as we go. The next one is, that project's on page 28 of the plan. The next one is Pirates Cove maintenance. And this could include pool resurfacing, renovations to the locker rooms, various play elements getting upgraded annually, Really the goal for the funding of this is to ensure that we replace and refresh our equipment so it's fresh and new and people want to come out to Pirates Cove. And that we have about 53,000 annually to use, including 2021, and that's on page 30. The next one is the Recreation Center improvements. And in that one, that's on page 36. And in the internal aquatic center, we've got a pool slides that need to be replaced, meeting rooms that need to be updated, locker rooms that need to be refreshed or renovated completely. It's heavily used, it's aging. There's improvements annually that we need, and next year we'll have $53,000 to implement some of these improvements that are needed. As we move on, and again, those are all out of our the Conservation Trust Fund, which is state lottery funds too, and that can only be used for recreation improvements. As we move into our open space fund, this is coming from Arapahoe County. It's our quarter-cent sales tax. It can only be used for parks and open space. But we have our tree replacement, our tree canopy. We get trees that age out and die, and we'd like to keep our trees replenished and healthy. And so it's not only just replacement of trees or removal of trees that have died, but annual maintenance, fertilizing, trimming of the trees to make sure that they're safe, and all that, stump grinding when trees are removed. We have 32,000 about that annually for tree replacement. That's on page 56. The next one is our park flower bed program. We actually just got the PO and the order in for our flowers for the spring and summer. And we utilize a lot of volunteers for this program, which helps save some money so we can do a little bit more. But we have about 25 flower beds throughout Inglewood that this funding goes to. We have $38,000 for that. And it not only purchases the flowers, the soil, topsoil, but also maintenance equipment to help the volunteers out, some handheld tools. And like I said, we use volunteers for that. And that's found on page 48. The next one is park maintenance employees. This is for a position and a half. So we have one full-time position throughout the year. This funding goes towards, and then we have a half a position that's a seasonal employee who is just actually, I believe he just started a week or two ago, even through this COVID stuff. He's out maintaining our parks. And so that's something we want to make sure we keep on the books annually. Is it's a huge help to our maintenance throughout our parks division. And that's on page 52. And that's about 126,000 annually. The next one is our grant matching funds. This is really important because we do go for a lot of grants. Right now we're renovating Romans Park, and part of our matching funds came out of this open space fund to ensure that we'd be able to complete the project fully. And in that we have allocated $273,000+, and that's found on page 40. So we like to have that funding in there for grants that do pop up, and they are quite a few out there that we can utilize to renovate our parks. And then moving into the public improvement funds, we've got Jason Park renovations. We've redone the playground, but there's still a lot of other improvements that we need there. Irrigation, restroom improvements, new picnic shelters, pathway improvements. We've got $1 million actually in 2022 for that. We want to keep that on the books. And then we've also got, let's see, we've got a couple more on there if you want to scroll down. One would be for parking lots, and yeah, there, go down a little bit further. There it is. Okay, so we've got Inglewood Recreation Center improvements. We've got $1.5 million. This is going to go towards renovating the front entrance of the recreation center to pop it out close to the parking lot, make it more functional as people enter in to the rec center to check in. And I think it's even more important now that we do look at renovating it and make it more customer service friendly, especially with the COVID situation where we have a better control point as people enter our facility. So that's the goal for that funding there. And then the parking lots, we have $60,000 to do improvements to the various parking lots that we have. That information is found on page 92. And then if we move into the capital funds, we have the Emerald Ash Borer there for $50,000. And that is, obviously, we have the Emerald Ash Borer that's coming through Colorado. It's killing off the ash trees. I think it's projected that through the state, about 30% of our tree canopy will die in the next 5 to 10 years. Hopefully that's not the case, but we do have some funding in there to help mitigate the emerald ash borer. There are some pesticides. I know it's a controversial topic, but there is some pesticides out there that can actually help control it and save the trees. And so not only this funding will go towards the removal of trees that have died off because of the borer, but also the treatment of trees impacted, and then replacing trees with a new species. And I go after the ash tree again, as we don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over again. So new species of trees will be planted with that funding. $50,000 annually should be helpful. It may not be enough if the emerald ash borer really starts to hit hard, but at least we have some funding to help out with. And then we'll move into the last couple projects that we have here that are out of our golf funds. And keep scrolling down, I think it's on page 12. There we go. So golf, we've got golf carts. We have kind of a cool deal that goes on with our golf carts. We trade in 12 carts annually, and they give us brand new shiny golf carts. And that's to the tune of almost $64,000. The information can be found on page 229 for that. It's been a program we've had going on for quite a few years. It works out pretty well. We give them the worst of the carts that we have. We just don't give them whichever ones, and they give us brand new ones. So it's a pretty good deal we have going with that. And then the other item, the driving range equipment. This is for equipment such as new netting, new mats, aeration tools for the course, mowers, different things. We've got 10,000 in there. That's dependent. This next year, I think we're going to do a lot of the mats that we'll replace where the golfers drive the ball off of to help save some of the turf in the driving range. So again, $10,609 for that, and that's found on page 307. I think that's all for Parks, Recreation, and Library.
Excellent. Certainly appreciate that. We'll come back with any questions. Next, we have Maria DeAndrea for Public Works. Maria.
Yes, thank you and good evening. So I'm Maria DeAndrea. I'm the Director of Public Works. So I'll be going over our Public Works projects as well as the Stormwater project. So just recently, the Stormwater Utility or Stormwater and Drainage Utility Fund became part of Public Works. So that's been a large area of focus for the city as a whole, due to flooding over the past couple of years, and we'll touch on those projects as well. Okay. Were you going to pull up the list, Nancy?
I didn't receive one from you. I can pull up the big document if you'd like, and we can find the page. Is that what you'd like to do?
Sure.
Okay. Give me a second. Sorry, folks. Maria, what page do you want to start on? I'll try to find it.
Let's see here. I think I've got it actually, so I'll pull it up. Let's see if I can do that. Okay. Let's see if I can... All right, can you guys see that? I'll try and go in a little bit. Okay. So we'll start after the ones Christina just went over, her Conservation Trust Fund projects there. So we'll scroll down to the next page. Oh, excuse me, go up. Okay, here we go. So the Conservation Trust, there's open space. So we'll start with alley maintenance there towards right at the towards the bottom there, page 9. So we did start a project this year, or actually it was last fall, to start to do some more intensive alley maintenance within certain zones of the city. So we did break the city up into 5 zones for pavement maintenance, and we're using those same zones to do alley maintenance. So we're focusing right now, our first project was down in the southwest portion of town. And we're going in with a contractor to create more of a V. So a center, right now, most of the alleys are graded very flat. And we want to create that V so that there's a concentrated sort of channel for where the water can drain. Then we're applying a dust suppressant to the surface of that once we got a good grade to the alley, and doing that dust suppressant so that we have less, not only less dust, but also less washboarding throughout the summer. So we're still finishing the project from 2019 because we had such early bad weather last fall. But our plan is to do 2 more zones in 2020, and we would just continue that project going forward and working basically 1 zone of the city each year. The next project there at the bottom of page 9 shows our US 285 congestion mitigation study. So the Public Works Department was successful last year in applying for 3 federal transportation projects, which were approximately 80% funded by federal transportation funding. This study in particular will look at congestion all the way from west of Santa Fe. So there's 2 signals just west of Santa Fe. The westernmost one is at Knox Court, if you're familiar, and Lowell Boulevard, if you're familiar with that area. And then this study would go all the way to I-25. So about 6.5 miles. And Inglewood will lead this study with input from CDOT as well as the neighboring jurisdictions. And you can see there CDOT also participated in funding, as well as the city of Sheridan and the city of Cherry Hills Village. So the intent of that study is to come out with certain improvement projects, let's say right turn lanes, signal timing, different things like that, to allow congestion to move more slowly or traffic to move better throughout the corridor. Then pavement maintenance by areas. And again, I mentioned about the 5 zones. So this is an ongoing program that we do each year. You can see that the dollars go up over time as prices go up. So we started the zone approach back in 2019 again. And so we feel that's been successful in terms of communication with the public, as well as focusing all of our efforts in one area when we work with our contractors. So he's not jumping from street to street throughout town. The next project, Dartmouth Avenue, US 85 to South Platte River Drive. That's the section just west of Santa Fe to the Dartmouth Avenue Bridge. So that's basically rebuilding that section of roadway. Again, we were successful in getting some CDOT funding through the Highway Safety Improvement Program to help with that. So if you're familiar, if you ever drive west on Dartmouth and cross over Santa Fe, you know that you have to basically merge there from the left lane because that becomes a left turn only. And so we're going to clear that up so that we have 2 through lanes in that direction. And that would be done in conjunction with the Dartmouth Bridge widening project that we have planned for 2021. Neighborhood street reconstruction. So the pavement maintenance, that's 2 lines up. That just looks at doing kind of surface maintenance treatments, mills and overlays, applying surface treatments, that sort of thing. This would be total reconstruction of a street. So this might be needed where the street pavement has either deteriorated so far that we can't basically salvage it through maintenance anymore, or we have to replace the underlying utilities, water, sanitary sewer, or stormwater, and then we would have to reconstruct because we're tearing up so much of the street, we would have to basically replace the street surface. So that's the intention there, is to create a program that has not been funded in the past. So this is the first year that that program is being seen on the capital improvement list. Next, this is one of the 3 federal projects that received federal funding. We're going to reconstruct the interchange of Broadway and Hampton. So that interchange right now is, as you know, it's 2 lanes in each direction on Hampton, and that 3rd lane becomes either the exit ramp or the on-ramp. And so you create that bottleneck underneath. So our intent is to widen out the bridge so that it's 3 lanes in each direction on Hampton, and then as well as widen the bridge on Broadway out so that we have better sidewalks, better pedestrian lighting, and bike lanes. So you can see there the city's share is about 1.1 million. We're beefing that up a little bit to adding some funds so that we can do maybe rebuild some of that park in the northwest corner where there was a fountain there and some other area improvements in conjunction with perhaps some development that might occur in that quadrant. The concrete utility program, that's a program we do every year. So many homes opt in to pay a certain portion of concrete utility on their utility bill. So we go around then and replace the sidewalk that is either heaved or broken in some way. And then we also, the city contributes a share. So that's what our $300,000 is for. So that typically goes for segments adjacent to parks, city land, or on the street side where we only charge people like on a corner lot for their front facing street, not the side street. So we pick up the share of that. We also pay for a certain number. That next line is the ramps. So we do need to replace pedestrian ramps and show that we're making progress towards ADA guidelines by replacing a certain number per year. Last year we did approximately 58 in zone 1. So we will be working in zone 2 this year and in zone 3 next year. And you can see there the high cost of doing that. So the guidelines have changed. So a lot of the ones that are in place out on the city streets do not meet current standards, and we have to upgrade those. All right, traffic signal rehabilitation and replacement. We have 64 signals that we're responsible for. And so this would be either replacing 1 to 2 of those per year. So if we have 64, they're not going to last 64 years. So we need to replace on average at least 1 per year or do a major rehabilitation to a second one. So that's the intent here with this dollar amount, is to try and start addressing each of those and upgrading them or replacing them. The next line down is signal equipment, upgrade and replacement. Again, there's certain components to the traffic signals, like the cameras, the detection signal equipment, other things that break within the controller box that sits on the corner. And so we have to constantly be upgrading that equipment to make sure that it stays current, that when it breaks, we have replacement parts, and our staff primarily does that. We do want to introduce the neighborhood traffic calming program. So that line there for $75,000, with the intent of that would be is that we would create a written program so that we could evaluate requests from the public and determine ways to address traffic calming. So that might be things like physical improvements, like small roundabouts, or it might be more enforcement or signage or different things like that. But that's what the program would establish, is that process as well as some of the fixes to do something like that. So we were, the East Dartmouth traffic calming, that was another CDOT funded project where along Dartmouth Avenue, west of Broadway, we're going to be putting in some improvements to add the on-street bike lanes, or well, we have the on-street bike lanes, but then add some, potentially look at removing some of the signals and replacing them with roundabouts or doing some other improvements to basically try and slow the traffic down and make that more of a multimodal street where pedestrians, bicyclists, and cars all feel comfortable moving in. Okay, we have a lot, as you can tell. Floyd and Malati intersection improvements, similar to what I just talked about. This is another CDOT funded project where we would look specifically at that intersection. Floyd and Malati, it's a little bit, there's a skew there as you drive along Floyd. And so we would look at probably doing something to make better align that intersection and potentially putting like a small roundabout in there, or just other improvements to help traffic move more safely through that intersection. All right, so let's see here, we'll go down. Now we're into the capital projects fund. So Margaret and Christina have touched on theirs. So I'll start with the our facilities projects. So facilities maintenance is within Public Works as well. And so we're trying to come up with a more robust list of projects to make sure that we're staying proactive in terms of taking care of our major facilities. So for the Civic Center, we've identified about $100,000 worth of just very general needs within the building to start to address. So these could be small things like modifying the air handling system, doing little upgrades here and there. So that's kind of a generic budget that runs each year. Then we get into some more specific projects. So next year we would like to do the Inglewood Rec Center, that's ERC, the air handling system, refurbish that or replace components of that. And then in the following year, we would upgrade the fans. That's not fans in the ceiling, but fans as part of the air handling system. So it's kind of a 2-year project. It would span those 2 years. Then facilities and operations general, again, similar to what the Civic Center line is up here. This line item is just kind of general things that come up during the year. We do plan those out in advance, but that'd be things like replacing carpet in certain areas, painting, doing some of those smaller kind of maintenance projects throughout the year. And then we do need to do an ADA audit of all city facilities. So I had mentioned that we're taking care of all the pedestrian ramps out in the city right away, and we have a good plan to address that. What we haven't done is audit or review our buildings to see what our ADA needs are. So that might be handles or handlebars, the railings, different things like that. Where do we have the right buttons in the elevator? All of those little things to make sure that we're compliant with ADA needs. And that would be for all of the city facilities. Okay. All right, so I think that's about it. We'll get into the stormwater drainage projects. So as I mentioned, we've identified approximately $40 million in needs initially over the next 5 years for the Stormwater Fund. And some of those are comprised of just cleaning and televising our storm sewer system. So you can see we have amounts allocated for the next 5 years to do that. And that hasn't been done in a very long time, or at least on a proactive plan basis. So our intent is to go through and not only clean and remove debris from the existing storm sewer, but then televise it to see where we have problems. So we send a TV camera down there unmanned and basically televise each length of the line in order then to come back, we review the video and see where we have problems. Usually that's at joints, or it's along the bottom, what we call the invert of the pipe, where that's deteriorated to some degree, or in the manholes. So then we can, from that video, then we can create a more robust, proactive plan. What segments do we actually need to go in and replace or repair? Project S1 is also in here. This would be replacing the storm sewer that's along Oxford all the way from east of Santa Fe all the way to the South Platte River. So that's, you can see that project alone is about $18 million. And we are currently developing the request for proposals to get an engineer on board to help us design that. Our intent would be is to design this year for construction beginning next year in 2021. We would also, similarly, Project S2 would run from the end of the Oxford storm sewer line at Navajo and Oxford south, kind of along a variety of streets, mostly Radcliffe, all the way to Rotolo Park. And it would again be replacing that storm sewer with larger storm sewer. And again, we would design that this year for construction beginning sometime in 2021. Project S3 runs basically along Broadway, just south of Tufts, then it turns along Tufts to Clarkson, and then north on Clarkson to the Greenway or Drainage Way. So that's in that neighborhood, we call that Project S3, and we are preparing plans or working with an engineer right now on the design of that. And then finally, our fourth project that we want to identify in these first 5 years and undertake, there's an existing line in Old Hampton. Basically, it runs from Clarkson all the way to Lincoln, and we would be upgrading that pipe to a larger diameter and then running a new line from Hampton down Lincoln to the Little Dry Creek. Again, with the intent is to build that next year. All right, so then that was all for the storm drainage fund. We do have a couple projects in the concrete utility fund. So we do you have a separate fund for concrete utility. So we do some curb and gutter repair each year out of there, as well as some sidewalk repairs. And then at the service center, we do have a separate fund as well for just for the service center. If you've never been down to that facility, it houses our fleet facilities, streets maintenance staff, as well as our utilities maintenance staff and our parks maintenance staff. So we do have a central building there that needs some upgrades, similar to the Civic Center project. We will be replacing 2 of the lifts over the next 2 years within the fleet bays. And then finally, I believe this is the last project, we need to replace all city vehicles on a rotating basis. So typically we replace anywhere between 20 and 28 pieces of equipment in a given year. And so our plan for next year involves about $1.6 million to keep up with all of that equipment replacement. And I believe that's it. Let me just check. Oh, there's a few more here. No. Yep, then we're into tier 2. So thank you very much.
Okay, certainly appreciate that. And seems to be no shortage of tier 1 there. Next for utilities, Peter Van Rij.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so as Maria, well, I'm Peter Van Rij, I'm the director of the Water and Sewer Utility. I'm also the director of South Platte Water Renewal Partners. I've been the director of South Platte Water Renewal Partners since August of 2018, and then just recently became the director of the Water and Sewer Utility in a dual director role in March of this year. So I've been at the helm of utilities for about a month and a half. I basically took over utilities a week and a half before this whole COVID thing started. So it's been an interesting start to the process. As Maria said at the beginning, we have a parallel path happening right now as it relates to the water and sewer capital planning process. And really that process started last fall in September when we hired a consultant, Hazen and Sawyer, to come in and perform a comprehensive master planning study for the water and sewer utility. They also did the stormwater utility as well. But with the water and sewer utility, there had been limited previous work done for many, many years. And so we actually just received the first drafts of those master plans in March, and I recently on April 13th presented them in a study session to council, the findings of those plans. And so the reason why you don't see a utility section in this compilation of all the capital projects right now is because it's still in development. So we have a draft results of what the needs are for the water utility and what the needs are for the sewer utility. And those are broken into 3 different phases, basically projects that are needed in the next 2 years, projects that are in the 3 to 5 year range, and projects that are in the 6 to 15 year range. We looked at all that information, and then what we do is we take all the results of that and we have given that to our rate and fee consultant. And so really the first result is, this is ideally if we, in a perfect world, this is all the projects that we would do. Well, in reality, we know that there's always limitations to funding. So what we're doing is we're taking that plan and we've given it to our rate and fee consultant, who we will then work with over the next 6 weeks to develop a 10-year financial plan to fund those projects. And so those projects are funded strictly from rates and fees. So water rates and fees, the largest of which is connection fees, so tap fees. And so that process just started last week, or the the capital project was just given to the consultant last week. They've been working on the project for about a month and a half right now. And basically what will come out of it is a comprehensive financial plan with a refined capital plan as well. We are bringing that back to council on June 22nd. So we're in the process of developing that right now. What I would offer to the commission, if they're interested, is the council packet that I prepared for council last Monday on the 13th has the draft master plan for water, the draft master plan for sewer, and then a summary of my slide, a slide deck of basically a summary of all that information. It's a 50-page slide deck, so it's a lot of information. And I think with that, you'll get a comprehensive sense of where we're at right now in terms of the water and sewer needs, but it's not finalized yet. So the reason why we couldn't include it in this capital plan right now is because we don't have the final capital plan without understanding the revenue needs and the financial planning associated with meeting those costs and those revenue needs. And so I can send Nancy a link to that presentation and that packet. It's 231 pages, so it's a lot of information, but that will give you a real good comprehensive sense of where we're at right now with the water and sewer planning process and the capital planning. And then from there, realize that these two processes will be occurring in parallel, and they'll merge together in the July timeframe so that we can move forward through the rest of the summer and meet the overall budgeting schedule into the fall. So I think that's really the quick summary. Basically, in summary, for over the next 15 years, the water capital projects total about $168 million, and the sewer capital projects total about $60 million. So it's not an insignificant amount of work, which is why we need to do that financial planning process as well. And I will open it up to, and that's what I have.
Okay. I certainly appreciate that. Just for purposes of this, and I'm just going to kick off the first one because we've got a lot of information. I want to narrow it down. And Peter, you made it real easy to start with you. Are you saying to this commission that at this point in time, for purposes of this capital improvement plan, you don't necessarily need us to allocate monies to you because that's coming from fees for usage, et cetera, water, storm?
Yes,
sewer.
that's correct. I would say that storm is actually being handled by Maria, but that also has an enterprise fund associated with it. The water enterprise fund funds the water. The sewer enterprise fund funds sewer. And actually both of those, that planning process will also in parallel be working through the water and sewer board as well. So it's much like the planning commission, in terms of a board that reviews that kind of information as it moves and makes recommendations to council. But in terms of comprehensively understanding, we wanted to provide this to you as well.
Well, certainly appreciate that, but for purposes of making our life just a smidge easier tonight, I want to personally thank you on behalf of all commissioners. But I am very curious, and I'm sure the commission is very, very curious to learn more as that progresses so that we understand, presumably as development moves forward, what does that look like? Is there infrastructure there? Does that make sense? Do we all work in conjunction so that we know what you know, you're running the right size lines, et cetera, to be able to handle the capacity? So.
Absolutely. And that's actually one of the policy discussions that was discussed with council was redevelopment.
Okay. Excellent. Well, we certainly appreciate that. At this point in time, what I'd like to do, I want to first of all, thank every single director and their staff for putting all this together. This is a tremendous amount of information, number one. And number two, to put it together in terms of how do you summarize the top priorities from 700 pages of information and do that in 60 minutes. Thank you. I think that's a tremendous amount of work. What I'd like to do at this point in time is I'd like to kick it to commissioners and say, what what would we have questions of for any of the directors, clarifying questions, anything working in conjunction with, et cetera, on what they've identified as tier 1 projects. So at this point in time, just kind of raise your hand and unmute, and we'll do our best to call on you as we see. All right. Mr. Adams.
Mr. Powers. It's well, a couple of them actually. The Santa Fe Oxford, the bridge over Santa Fe at Oxford, that's going to be a huge bridge. It's going to be a lot of money on that. Can we, that bridge and the Oxford Bridge, can we get the existing apartment building there that is the one that's is going to be using the bridge, plus the new apartment building that's being built behind it or south of it, to go in on the cost of the bridges?
Well, I don't know that we could. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. Okay, first of all, I have to apologize. The 8 o'clock howl is going on in my neighborhood, so if you hear that, I apologize for that. We have some vociferous neighbors. I don't know that we can compel either project to participate. We could certainly reach out to those particular projects. The Oxford Apartments has been in place for almost 4 years, and the project that will start breaking ground just south of the Oxford Apartments, the Navajo Apartments, was actually approved several years ago, and they just recently decided to construct their project. So there's certainly the opportunity to try to have conversations with both of those property owners to say it's in your interest to participate in this, but there's nothing at this point, given the fact that one is constructed, the other one was approved, as I said, probably 4 or 5 years ago. There's not anything that we can do to compel them to do that, but we could certainly, when the time comes, reach out to those property owners and have the discussion around that. I know you didn't ask about well, maybe you did the one over Santa Fe. That might actually be an interesting one to try to think about in the context of the city center redevelopment. It's far too early to say what type of public improvements would be on the list as part of that phased redevelopment, but that's something that we could also build into the potential public-private partnership efforts around there, and also the discussion around the Downtown Development Authority as a possible funding mechanism. Because as it's proposed now, if the DDA were to be in place, it would include the western part of that area around City Center. So I just wanted to chime in on that as well.
That would the Santa Fe Bridge.
I'm sorry, Mr. Adams, you broke up and I couldn't really hear your question.
The bridge over Santa Fe.
Yes.
Where would that begin and end?
It would be just in the proximity area of the transit station, and it would land over kind of close to those apartments on the west side.
Oh, okay. The rail trail from Dry Creek to Oxford, that's pretty much would be used more by Littleton than Inglewood, isn't it?
Well, no, it would connect the Oxford area to the rail trail or the Big Dry Creek area. It's part of the larger regional system. So yes, it would benefit Inglewood, but it also connect us to the larger regional bike system as well. So that's part of the overall rail trail efforts throughout all of the different tiered segments.
Okay. I guess that's all I have for you. It's I have some questions on the open space.
Okay. I'm having some technical difficulties here. Nancy? Here we go. Hang on.
What you need?
I'm good. Questions on the open space, Carl?
Yeah, the $290,000 for a grant. So on a grant, there's a lot of manual labor put into that, or, you know, as time-wise. But, and those are very, we've used those very well in the past, and they're very useful, but I don't understand where the $290,000 is going to.
Are you talking about the for new grants?
Correct.
Yeah, so that's allocated and earmarked for when other grants do come up. And like I mentioned, as an example, Romans Park, our phase 2 of that project, I think we're using around $300,000 in matching out of the open space fund for 2020 to apply for the Arapahoe County grant to do phase 2 of Romans Park. And so we want to ensure we have enough funding in that account to be at least, you know, some of the grants that we've gone after have been a 50% match. So if we're looking at a $600,000 project, we need to have $300,000. Each grant's a little different in their requirements. And so we just want to ensure if we're looking at a $500,000 project, we have a match there that we can pursue, and it ups our game in the grants when we're competing against other organizations that maybe don't have as significant of a match to go after that grant.
Okay, it's match money then.
It is,
yes. Yeah. On the ash borer cost, the $50,000, we haven't really done a whole lot of spraying on that. Is that money carry over from year to year and add up until we really do need it?
I believe so. If Maria's on here, she can confirm that. But yeah, the $50,000, it's going to vary year to year as the ash borer starts to pick up. You know, the funding is going to have to increase to keep up with removal of trees or the insecticides to ensure the borer's not attacking the trees. So Maria can probably confirm that. I believe it does roll over.
Maria?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Yes, it does.
Okay, because we don't use it now, but it's very soon we will be probably.
Correct.
And thing on there's a multiple items in there that actually pay for themselves, like the Inglewood train in Bellevue Park. That brings in like $80,000 a year or more, and it's the cost is what, $15,000 or something.
Correct.
So is that that's not really a thing that we have to approve or council approves? So how does that work?
The train and the farm and train is not an enterprise fund. That's still supported by a general fund. And again, the Bellevue train and some of those projects that are under the Conservation Trust Fund, those come from state lottery funds. So technically it's monies that are given to the city, but they're earmarked specifically for the parks and open space areas. So in some respects, we just have it allocated for that to ensure we can perform the annual maintenance.
Okay. All right, thank you. I have some public works questions for Maria.
Okay.
For the alley paving, could they, is that actual paving or is that just grading mostly?
Yeah, that's just grading. So if the actual alley paving, we do have a line in there, but it's tier 3. So we decided that given that we don't have a program in place yet, so we'd have to work through those policy issues, such as would the city pay for 100%? How would we prioritize which alleys to pave? All of that, we can be working on those policy issues, but it's probably premature to identify funding for 2021 at this point. So the line item that I talked about is truly just for that grading. So keeping with the dirt alleys until we have a more robust plan and policies in place for the actual alley paving.
Okay, I appreciate that. What I'd like to do at this time is give other commissioners an opportunity to ask a question or two or three. Kate, I see you have your hand up. I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Sure. Thanks. I guess just quick clarification question. So community development does not have any requests for 2021 for capital improvements, that it's would be at least 2022 for those requests unless we suggest it to move something up.
Actually, the rail trail segment bridge at Oxford, that project was proposed for 2021.
Okay.
The rest are in the following years.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. I was like trying to go back and forth and look at them. Next one, do you mind if I go through a couple of them, Mike?
Please, go right ahead.
In terms of the IT, I guess context would be helpful with like adding in the badging systems, new wiring and things like that. Do we have a sense if we're staying in, we as in the city, you know, staying in the same location? And I guess this is just a question for the commissioners. Does it make sense to put all of that infrastructure in now unless we're sure that there's going to be a long-term commitment to stay into that in that space? So just a question, I guess. And then for Public Works, the Broadway 285 interchange, that seems great. I was just wondering then if you're saying that there may be improvements that could be done to so like the Little Dry Creek area, plaza area, would that include, it looked like further down there's places where there was no funding for that. Would that possibly cover some of that funding?
Yeah, some of it. There's so we'd at least probably look at the design right in that northwest quadrant, maybe not all the way down to like where the plaza is, but at least doing some improvements right there, since we're right in that area with the bridge, kind of in that corner, if you will.
Okay. And then one more question to kind of combine a couple things together. For example, storm sewer along Old Hampton, would that be one of those projects where you're already tearing up most of the street, so it's storm sewer project and then also like a total street redo project? And if so, not to get into tier 2, but would it make sense to go ahead and look at a complete street for that whole section instead of waiting another year for that?
Yeah, that's the intent, is that our intent is to work with the hospitals and the adjacent businesses there to create what's called a complete street. So probably removing traffic, widening the sidewalks, adding pedestrian lighting, that sort of thing. What we would do, and I know probably, I believe the sanitary sewer and or the water lines underneath there need some work as well. So we'd probably do those utilities next year, let that all settle, and while we're working on the design for the complete street. So you will see in tier 2 the design for that complete streets, but we would probably phase it just because there's so much traffic in and out of the hospital there. So it's a longer construction period, but hopefully to do it all at once might not be possible, if that makes sense.
Yep, that's helpful. Thank you. That's all I have, Mike.
Thank you. Anybody want to raise their hand? Who's next with a question? All right, Kate.
I just have some questions for the IT for Margaret. So I was just wondering, you said that we replace the computers every 4 years. Which computers are they? Are they the ones in the Inglewood building?
These are all of the computers used by all of the employees, as well as the public computers in the library and the rec center.
Okay, awesome. And then I was wondering when we're done with the computers, where do they go after the 4-year life?
We auction them.
Okay, cool. I was wondering, would there be any saving, or I guess what I'm getting at is, if we were to make it 5 years instead of 4, would there be any opportunity to save there? And is it just because of the types of computers we're purchasing, they really only are that great for 4 years instead of like a 5th year?
We just found with the changing technology that 4 years is the industry standard for us to change them out and keep up.
Okay, cool. And then I think I just have one other question for you about the security cameras. So because of your 4-year computer kind of rule of thumb, how long are we expecting the security cameras we install this year or next year, sorry, to last? When would we have to replace them again to keep up with tech?
The security cameras we replace about every 5 years, although the majority that are in the city at this time are well past their 5-year mark. So we're slowly trying to upgrade them to better quality cameras.
Okay, awesome. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for the directors? Daryl?
Yeah, I have a few questions. I want to thank, my fellow commissioners for asking several of the questions that I had. I didn't hear an answer to Kate's question though, which I had also about the first question that she made, maybe because, it wasn't, because it's kind of a general question. Was there an answer to that I missed, or?
Yes, but the one about adding wiring and badging and all of that?
Well, actually, yeah, basically the question was, if there are changes made, for infrastructure and so forth, and then, does that make sense given the fact that buildings might be changed? I think that was the gist of your question. Is that fair? Okay. And I don't know who, I guess that's kind of a general question for everybody.
I'm gonna direct that to Sean Lewis. You've been conspicuously quiet, and so here's your opportunity, Sean. But I think you'd probably be best to address that, and we look forward to your answer.
Well, I think Margaret might have a more technical answer with regard to the wiring itself. But I've committed to Director Power to keep an open mind with regard to our redevelopment of City Center. As you know, this building is almost paid for, which is a really nice spot for a city to be in for a public building. But I am keeping an open mind about the planning that's underway with regard to city center redevelopment. But at this time, we are committed to this site for the time being, and that is the direction we have from council at the time, while we're still continuing to examine other opportunities. But so I think we have to continue to invest in this site as long as we're committed to it. But Margaret, can you speak more directly to the fiber question?
Yeah, to the badging system. So primarily there's 2 reasons that we want to do it. One is for better management over the badge system. And 2 is to add more building locations. So the building locations that we add won't change if we change offices out of Civic Center. Any of the equipment that we put into Civic Center can also be relocated to a new location. The only negative to it would be the wiring, which would be a very small cost to the entire project. All of the software and the hardware would go with us.
Okay, that's good to know. So basically the physical wiring would be the main expense that would change if locations were moved.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and then I guess I had a few other questions about, I know that for instance, the bridge at Oxford and some of the US 285 project. I guess this question would be for more of an infrastructure question, and that would be, some of those things were Dr. Cog funded. I wasn't clear like how the bridge over Santa Fe and the bridge connection south to the Dry Creek, how would those be entirely Inglewood funded? Are those, we're looking at additional funding for that? What's the status on that?
Yeah, so the 3 projects that we were successful in getting federal funding for were the US 285 and Hampton Interchange for about $9.5 million. The US 285 congestion mitigation study all the way from Lowell Court west of Santa Fe all the way to I-25, and then the Oxford pedestrian bridge over Oxford just east of Santa Fe to the light rail station there. So the other projects that Brad mentioned would be city funded at this point.
Okay.
The next round of DRCOG or federal transportation funding will come in 2022 for the 2023 fiscal year.
Okay, so those could possibly be resubmitted at that time for additional funding. Okay, thank you. And then I guess the other question I had is, it was mentioned, I guess by Parks, the thing with the recreation center and the improvements that would be made to the front of the center. That's something that's been talked about. I mean, I was originally told that it was going to be done last fall. And then I don't know if that's something that's, I'm just kind of curious what the status of that is.
Yeah, thanks. So right now, I believe that's slated for 2022 to do that. One thing we have to kind of keep in mind is obviously year after year, costs go up on construction projects. And so, we always wish we could have done it 10 years ago, but the money's, changed year after year. So ultimately 2022, we have $1.5 million to do that renovation. And that would be the goal, is to complete that, to keep that building viable and interesting and new, and make it more safe too for individuals entering. And like I said in the presentation, it's become more prevalent with the COVID situation that we do need to make changes to that facility probably sooner than later to ensure if it happens again, we have protection in place for everybody.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is you would like to do it sooner rather than later, but realistically, it's still a couple years off.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions, Daryl?
Oh, I have lots of questions, but that'll be
Okay.
it for now. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Appreciate the questions. Let me move on. Diane, I see you've raised your hand. I will lower your hand and welcome to the party.
Thank you. First, I just want to say thank you to all the directors for pulling this all together. It's, as Commissioner Freemeyer said, really great to see everything we're trying to do to make Inglewood better. Sorry, my daughter may jump in. I'm on the phone right now, babes.
Everybody wave. Come on. Hello.
Wait.
Hi.
It's back there. Go ask them. There you go. Sorry. I also just want to say I think that the desire to improve regional connectivity is great to see Inglewood be kind of considered in the larger context of the Denver metro area. And also thank you to Commissioner Townley for bringing up the complete streets question. That was one I had. My first question is for Director Underhill with regards to, it's sort of a twofold question. With regards to the Emerald Ash borer, sort of begs the question, is there a citywide tree inventory? If so, how many of the trees are ash trees? And when you talk about ash trees, are we talking only public, like public parks and right-of-way trees, or are we talking citywide?
Yeah, those are both great questions. First of all, we are part of Tree City USA. We have been for many years, which does require tree inventory to be done. Off the top of my head, I do not know how many are ash trees. I can find out though. And it would only be for public right-of-ways. So our parks, public right-of-ways, it wouldn't be privately owned properties that the funding would go towards.
It would be definitely great to see sort of what percentage of our tree canopy is, because it just seems very low. Like at whatever point this hits 50,000 sounds like not nearly enough. So a program to start, enhancing the canopy and diversifying the canopy now before it hits seems like something that could be really good. And then my other question was partially related to the flower beds and also park maintenance and employees. With regards to the flower beds, what is the background on those? Is it really just annuals? Mm-hmm. Is there any way that program can relate to the Inglewood Forward Plan with the goals of, I think it was goal learn 6 for conservation, mm-hmm. and goal learn 7 for stewardship, environmental stewardship, in terms of, appropriate use of plant material, things like that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I just started here in January, but I know this flower bed program has been going on a long time. And we have many great volunteers that come back year after year to help with this program. And we do work with local nurseries to procure the different plants that we'll be using in the gardens. We do have great park staff that have been in the industry a very long time. And look at all that. Moving forward, I would agree that the goals that are out there with stewardship and everything, we're always recruiting volunteers and people to be involved. And this is a great program just for that, to get the volunteers out there and beautify Inglewood more or less through these flower beds.
Awesome, thank you. And then the last question for you with regards to the park maintenance employees. Yeah. I know you said that there's 1.5 employees. Yeah. Is that sort of the minimal request, or is that really sufficient to maintain the parks, or is there really a desire for more?
So, I mean, we have other park employees. We just don't have 1.5 out there, but this is the part of the funding that we get from Arapahoe County. And we've dedicated some of that funding that we get annually for this 1.5 park employees. And in talking to the Parks Division and asking questions about this program, they said it's very necessary to have the one full-timer. It makes a big difference having that individual on board. And then the seasonal employee does a lot of our summer type maintenance programs. And like I mentioned before, they just started. So again, it's kind of nice because you get 1.5 people out of a program that doesn't necessarily impact the city's general fund because it's grant funded.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
We could always use more, but that's what we get. So we're good with it.
And then my last questions are for Director DeAndrea with regards to Public Works. I just had a couple of questions. And partially maybe this was alluded to by Commissioner Townley, but what of the public improvement requests are considering kind of more green infrastructure and sort of sustainability as part of the programs?
I would say a lot of our things, we for example, our annual pavement maintenance, we recycle all of the asphalt. So we do keep that material at the service center, and that's what we've been using a lot of in the alleys. Then we put that material down, and it's actually better than it's ground up, but it's less less runoff than just straight dirt. So that has helped to track it down. So we are reusing those materials. We also try and recycle as much as possible. So our concrete, let's say we tear up sidewalks, the contractor will bring that to a site where it's recycled into new concrete or into different materials. So from sustainability, we don't really recognize that. It's just something we automatically do. As far as, with our stormwater, we try and incorporate water quality elements into that as much as possible. So we are looking at how can we create diversion areas or filtering areas to filter out the stormwater before it enters the system where we could.
Gotcha, thank you. And then my last, so you sort of answered my question about recycling, but my last question is in regards, I think you mentioned it in the East Dartmouth traffic calming, but you mentioned roundabouts. I'm curious sort of which of the programs are really working towards the multimodal mobility goals from Inglewood forward, and also with specific regards to the roundabouts. I'm curious if you could share any information on the use of that versus stop signs or use of other types of insertions with regards to the different types of modes of transit on the road?
Sure. Yeah, we have a couple, and I think I misspoke earlier because I said west of Broadway. I'm talking east of Broadway on Dartmouth. We have a couple of signalized intersections over there. I believe Clarkson is one, and I think Logan, where it's like, is there enough traffic to really warrant a signal there? So, right now you come up to the signal, might be a non-busy time, and you're sitting there waiting for that signal to change. Some of those at those lower volume intersections, they're very old. And so we don't have a lot of detection. And so they're running on these automated, usually 30-second cycles. And so you have a lot of idling going on. And to upgrade those is quite expensive. And so we are looking at, could we just take the signal out and replace it with a small roundabout so that everybody can move more easily? And then that would help with the bicycles as well, because they're not having to stop, nor are they having to then interact, you know, with traffic in, you know, where there could be a running light situation by either the bicycles or the vehicles. And so it just ends up being a safer situation all around. And so it's some of those kind of, you know, right on the cusp intersections like that where we think we can make a lot of improvements.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Excellent. We certainly appreciate that. And next we want to go to Michelle. You've got your hand up.
Well, I wanted to clarify this whole Dartmouth calming thing, because I'm one house off of Dartmouth. So in the proposed budget, it talks about a roundabout, a mini roundabout at Malati and Dartmouth. And now you're talking about Logan and Clarkson. So I'm very confused and would appreciate some clarification.
Yeah, so I think it's just an idea right now. So we're looking at that corridor of Dartmouth to say, what could we do in terms of balancing out all the different modes of traffic? So making it safer for walkers, bikers, and vehicles, and not always giving precedent necessarily to the vehicles. And so again, and then cutting down on idling as well. So people have the temptation at a signal, if there's no traffic coming, to run that light, or in a stop sign situation. And so we're trying to cut back on that. The roundabouts are just an idea at this point. We would do more public outreach to talk about that, to see if that's a viable option, and our engineers would have to look at that too. So that's just an idea, but we want to look at the corridor as a whole, as what improvements can we make to treat all modes of traffic.
Well, as a person who travels Dartmouth virtually every day, even now, I will tell you that nobody runs the light on either, there's 3 lights, Downing, Clarkson, and Logan. I've never seen anybody except for bicycles running those lights. So in my opinion, because of that, I would bump that down on my priority list.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, Ms. Austin?
Could I respond to that note on Dartmouth? I actually
Please.
live at Dartmouth and Downing, and I've seen several cars run the light, so sometimes getting into a crash. So it's definitely a difficult intersection.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that that as we consider this, it would be helpful, particularly along there, if the police have any indication of accidents that they've seen, traffic tickets they may have issued, so that we, you know, everybody has their own perspective, but I'd like to see what the police department has. If we could have that information, that would be helpful, I think. Okay. Any other commissioners have any questions? Judy, you've been quiet. Noel, I'm Carl. I'll get to you. Just hang on. Judy, is that a yes? Questions, or you're good? Okay. Noel, it's all you.
Great, thank you. For the bridge across Santa Fe, what would be the route from the western edge of that to the South Platte Trail? How would those connect?
So I'm having a little bit of trouble conceptualizing how we would do that, because there would be a hike. We'd have to probably connect via some of the streets there, or on private property. But that would be part of the overall effort to try to plan for that bridge in 23, 24 to do the engineering and the property acquisition to try to connect to it.
And I believe it would have to go over the Platte as well to get to the bike trail?
Yes. There'd be a pedestrian bridge over the Platte.
With the new bike lane along Dartmouth and the pre-existing pedestrian underpass under Santa Fe, right by Dartmouth, was rehabilitating that existing path an option?
I'm not familiar with anything that we've looked at recently on that. I'm not sure if Maria's group has looked at anything around the Dartmouth area for that path in particular.
That's existing. I think we've had a request for some additional lighting that Parks maintains on that underpass. Gets a little dark under there. But yeah, that's still a viable option to get under Santa Fe at this point.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Noel, any additional questions? We're good?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, absolutely, you're welcome. Anybody else? I know Carl, you had raised your hand, but anybody else have anything? Michelle, I didn't know whether you were raising your hand or whether you were just signaling somewhere else. If, just let me know. Okay, I think we're good then. Carl, let's go back to you. I'll unmute you. There you go.
Director DeAndrea, I got my item that I stick with is the street lights that are out in Inglewood. There's like 30. The globe lights there's at least 34 of them that are out. Over half of them, mostly in the plaza area there. I'm not sure what what's involved in the XL streetlight thing. Could that be combined with that to get that moving along, or is there two different things there?
Yeah, I'll give you an update on that project. So Commissioner Adams is referring to the lights kind of in the Big Lots parking lot or out along Hampton there, and running along Inglewood Parkway as well. So those are city-owned pedestrian lights or street lights, as opposed to Excel-owned, which are in most of the neighborhoods. So the power poles or the street lights that are at the intersections in all the residential areas are all owned and maintained by Excel. We do pay a monthly fee for that maintenance and for the electricity, but then they take over the maintenance, whereas those city-owned street lights are owned and maintained by us. So we did get a contractor on board, an electrician, to fix those. They've identified the problems, but they're having trouble getting the parts. And the last update I got was that those were supposed to arrive sort of by the end of April. So it has delayed the project a little bit, but we anticipate that being done within the first few weeks of May to get all those lights relit. If you do have an outage in the neighborhoods, then you call Excel for that. But the line item that I was referring to, I believe I had $300,000 in there for 2021. We've got intersections that don't have streetlights in some cases. And so it would be essentially paying Excel to put up streetlights where none exist right now, where there might still be a safety need. We have identified some mid-block crossings kind of in our industrial area too that could probably use another light. So it's stuff like that, kind of filling in the gaps with Excel for that particular project.
Okay.
Okay. The concrete fees that the citizens, the residents pay for the concrete repair.
All right, Carl.
It's pretty low. Could they raise that to?
All right, Carl. Could we direct our conversation? We don't have. It's not in our purview to set fees. What we're trying to do is to understand what projects go, and then help council to understand kind of from those projects where we would go from there. So could you direct questions relative to, at this point in time, tier 1 projects at this point? If you don't have a question, it's okay.
Okay, let me go back to the paving of the alleys. If we could pave the alleys where the S3A flooding is to avoid the gravel going into the drains, seems like that would be a good idea to try to keep the gravel out of the drains, giving a priority to where the flooding is.
Gotcha.
That
Yes.
would have to be coordinated with the district.
Okay, excellent points. Let's go ahead and move to Kate. I see you have your hand up.
Just had, I guess, a quick question. If someone can help me understand the source of funds for capital improvements and public improvement, the source of the capital improvement and public improvement funds, are those based on a projection of funds coming in, or is that money that we currently have?
This is Maria. The 5.5 million that I mentioned, 1.5 is a carryover. The remaining, well, the biggest chunk, the 4 million, would be revenues that we are expecting to come in from, for example, the bridge fee, I believe the Arapahoe, there's an Arapahoe County fee. And I'm going to ask Jenny because I'm not looking at my notes. Jenny, what are the other two sources of funds for that, for those project funds?
We have vehicle use tax. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure if my mic was working, sorry. Vehicle use tax and building use tax. We've estimated about 1.8 million for each of those for 2021. And we receive approximately 200,000 from Arapahoe County road and bridge tax.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Okay. Excellent. Daryl, I see you have your hand up. You are next, sir.
You need to unmute.
Daryl, I'm going to click you to unmute, okay?
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You're on.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Maria had a mention with the streets that, you know, there's certain intersections that have stoplights that may no longer need a stoplight. And I think of, you know, intersections that basically stoplights probably haven't been improved for, I don't know, 50 or more years. And I'm just wondering how do you prioritize those? You know, obviously with the Dartmouth study, I guess since that's being studied, you have the opportunity to replace that, and that's why you're looking at that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so, you know, ideally what we'd like to get to is we consider signals or signs or our streets all as an asset. And so we're trying to look at it from an asset management perspective, in that how do we manage each of these groups of assets, and to your point, prioritize them for replacement in a proactive way. So right now, some of those signals are between 50 and 60 years old. So age obviously is a huge component. But each of those for a new signal is in the range of $400,000 to $500,000. Right. So that's why it's really important for us as we replace them, even if they're old, does it make sense to replace them? Or could we get by with something that's cheaper and that doesn't have the ongoing electrical and maintenance costs of a signal, even if we did replace it? So age is a huge component. In the case of the signals, it would be the amount of traffic that's traveling through there. So the more traffic, then there's the more likelihood for crashes or accidents. And so we would want to prioritize that. So the more traffic, then it's probably a higher priority to make sure that it's as safe as possible.
Is there any current prioritization done for that, or is that just an opportunity?
We're working on that. So of those 64 signals, we're basically doing an inventory this year to see what the components are, what needs to be replaced, and then we'll put those use a quantitative kind of analysis to put those in a ranking order. But we're not there yet.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, Daryl? Okay, I think we're good. All right, I'd like to note a couple things, and then in deference to time, we have about 15 minutes left. We have a few more agenda items. So if I may, with regard to the rec center, there are a number of items here. I don't have any specific comment regarding the any particular budget item in general, but I think it would be helpful for this commission, and also for the council, to understand what the income statement looks like in consideration to, you know, we're starting to talk some very large numbers in terms of capital expenditure. And I think an income and balance sheet or profit and loss statement and balance sheet and cash flow analysis would be very helpful for, in particular, the council to understand rates, to understand number of people served. And it's my understanding that now, we have a multiple private entities and a new one that's just moved in. And what does that look like? So I think that's going to be helpful if we could understand that. Not looking for an answer tonight. Number two, with regard to the fiber that we're running between city buildings, are we running a redundant fiber at that point in time as well with the boring contractors?
We have a plan to run a primary fiber line and a plan to run a redundancy over the years. Initially, we're starting with primary.
Okay. When the contractor is pulling on a directional bore, are they at least pulling a second, even if it's an empty cable with a tag line to pull through?
An empty conduit, yes.
Yes. Okay. Good deal. Just because the expense is twofold. At $10 to $20 a foot, that gets pretty expensive.
Yes.
Okay.
Our plan is to pull redundancy at the same time. If we can't afford it, we're doing a primary and then coming back with the redundancy.
Got it. Got it. Okay, excellent. With regard to alternative funding, I applaud the use anytime we can get lottery, open space funds, golf user fees, federal fund matching, state matching, et cetera. I wonder, and this really is for Peter Van Rye, is part of the consultancy under contract at this point, are they going to be identifying potential sources for stormwater and or sewer federal or state grants within this particular scope of their project?
So as part of the this project, it is not looking at additional funding sources. However, there are a number of funding sources from a sewer perspective that are national programs that we would be looking at separately. So it's not part of the consultants' work, but it's something that we're considering as part of ways to supplement funding and increase funding. That's for the sewer. Additionally, actually on the water side as well. On the stormwater side, I think I'm going to defer to Maria to respond on that.
Okay, Maria?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So the storm sewer funding, did you ask?
Yes, just looking at our alternative, I mean, these are huge numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still only 11,000 or so rooftops and 33,000 or so people to pay for that. Those are huge numbers. So just looking for alternative sources of funding.
Yes, I'm sorry, the grants. Yes, we continue to, we actually recently applied for a conservation grant through the CDPHE, Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. And we're also exploring some alternatives for a loan for the S1 and S2 projects at least. So Maria Sabata and I have been working closely with a consultant as well as the teams from CDPHE and the Colorado Department of Local Affairs on those grants. And it could be a grant or it could be a loan, but we are exploring those opportunities.
Okay, excellent. Certainly appreciate that. Last question I have, actually I had a couple statements and then a couple questions, but with regard to the city fleet, rather than looking at just the age of a vehicle, are we also looking at it at its ability to perform its function? So in other words, you may have a good old dog you just want to still take hunting.
Absolutely. You know, we're a city of only 6.6 square miles. So when we look, we don't look just at age, but mileage as well. So we can have some very well-maintained vehicles. We have a fairly proactive and aggressive preventative maintenance schedule. So we do keep our vehicles in good condition, and they are probably older than the average life cycle of other communities. But from a sustainability standpoint, we also want to explore Electric vehicles continue to look at that as an alternative. But we do look at more than just age. And so it's mileage, it's condition, what are we using that particular task or that particular piece of equipment for, and does it still fit the needs and the requirements of what the department needs?
Excellent, excellent. Well, let's go ahead and do this unless there's an objection from commissioners. Here's what I would like to ask. Michelle, please.
Just quickly before we leave the topic, is there any funding available regarding all of the storm sewer water damage? Because that was a huge, it's been a huge problem for years. Is there any federal funding that we might pursue regarding taking care of the Oxford and Santa Fe, especially that intersection and other intersections that we need to address?
Yeah, we are exploring that. So the federal funding is very competitive, as you can imagine. And with flooding and other natural disasters across the country, there's a lot of communities applying for a relatively small amount of dollars. But we will continue to pursue that if we think that makes sense. Again, our consultant is going to help us with that application process. We're trying to focus more on state grants that might give us some more funding that are localized to Colorado.
Okay. Anything else? Because I'd like to bring a conclusion here that I think could be helpful. Carl, one last question. Go ahead.
Items on the list that said C map. Where is these maps at?
Yeah, I can get those to you. I don't believe they were attached to the presentation, but it's our pavement zone map, and I can send that out through Nancy to the entire commission.
Okay, appreciate it.
Okay, excellent, and appreciate that for a point of clarification. Here's what I would ask staff to do to help the commission. We have gone through a great amount of information tonight. So we've taken 700 pages, and I have 5 pages of notes here. Now, I'm sure if we compared all of our notes, given the fact we're all in our own little miniature silos in this meeting, I would really appreciate it if staff could take what they presented as the tier 1, take this 700 pages, you've just done this, put that in one document that's probably going to be about 4 or 5 pages, okay, and then distribute that to the commission. And what I would task the commission to do between meetings, between this meeting and the next, because at the next meeting, we'd like to be able to come to some conclusion, which would be a recommendation of multiple projects to the city council. What I'd like to task the commission members with is, once we receive this packet of, here's the condensed version of tonight's meeting, these are the tier 1 projects, this is what it is, this is how they're funded. If there are questions, not to one another, but to, via staff, via Nancy and Wade, if we could ask those questions so that we could then create a dialogue, which would be a summary document of, here's everything information we've given, here are the questions that other commissioners or perhaps yourself have asked, here's staff's answers, so that it becomes easier for us during the next meeting to be able to come to a conclusion. Does that make sense? Anybody not agree with that? We're good? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads, yes. Excellent. So let's go ahead and do this. Unless there's any objection, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is staff's. Carl, go ahead.
Okay, so I like your idea of the reduced list, but what are we supposed to come up with?
Okay, so here's the task.
Do we pick?
Okay, Carl, and to everybody, here's the task. We have, round numbers, we've got $11 million of needs and wants. We have $5 million of funding. In the 11 million, we have multiple year projects, some of which were in year 2, 3, etc. We have matching funds that come from in some cases, 80% federal match to our 20%. And then ideally, we need to come up with a matrix that says, this is our recommendation to council of how best to serve the citizens of the community. And so it's not an easy task. So it's gonna require some individual thought, and certainly there'll be questions as we move forward. Okay? Okay. So really, this is much more in depth than we've done in all the years past that I've had the opportunity to serve. Kate, you're nodding your head yes. Anybody who's been here, but what a wonderful opportunity. Okay, because now we can truly be of service to the council, be of service to staff, serve one another, learn a great deal more about how our community works, and ultimately serve the citizens in order to make this a better place. Okay, so big work, big responsibility. That's why we're all getting paid the big bucks, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and move to the next item, which is staff's choice. We have a number of staff here. Let's go around as you see fit.
Chair Freemeyer, I have nothing else to report for tonight.
Okay.
Neither do I.
Okay. Thank you.
Nothing for me either.
We're good?
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else from staff? All right, Dugan, you've been quiet all night except for to say present. Here's your chance, man.
I have no report this evening.
Love you. All right, Commissioner's choice. Why don't we go around? Carl, I'm just going to go around as I see it on my screen. Carl, anything?
There was a couple of things brought up at the study session last night, or whenever it was, that council is talking about body cameras for the police. I don't know how that would go into the budget and when it would go into the budget, but it seems like a few of them are pretty agreed on doing that. So I'm not sure how that would, when we would see that. That could be a while. And another thing they were talking about was the tap fees for the city trying to make some more money out of the tap fees. They have a council request on that, so not sure how that's going to go. That's nothing to do with us though, apparently. So,
yep.
So that's all I got.
All right, thank you. Kate.
Nothing really to report. I just shared a resource with Nancy and Mike on green infrastructure for Colorado downtown streets, and it outlines a lot of the funding at the state and federal level that can be used for that. So I emailed it to Nancy if folks are interested in seeing that for any projects. So.
Excellent. We appreciate that. Diane.
No, I have no further questions or items.
Excellent. By the way, your daughter is adorable, and I think that was your son who walked in. It was nice to see both of them.
Yes, thank you. Slurping a straw very, very loudly.
That's all right. That's all right. I had my adult children out doing something in my family room. So, all right, all is well. Michelle.
Yes, as someone who was a little bit cranky about receiving a 700-page document last week, I have to say that I have never seen such an in-depth report about how our money is being spent in Inglewood and our capital accounts, potential, and I apologize for being cranky about a 700-page document to have to digest before tonight. And to be honest, last year we had, including myself, had many of us on the commission complaining that we really didn't understand how, we just had a list of projects. We didn't understand how the individual departments ranked them. And this report gave us those rankings. And they not only did that, but they did it in a pretty way. They had all sorts of graphics and things like that. So I know there was an enormous amount of time spent by staff working remotely to produce this report. And I'm so very grateful. And it's very, very helpful to me. And there are a few questions going forward, but this is a huge step up and forward for us understanding the capital budget process. I'll be honest with you, I went through everything that we did last year and what we ranked them as. I actually listened to the audio. You know, we ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. None of those projects that we ranked actually made it into the budget. So to get this sort of information tonight or last week, it makes me feel so great, because we're not going to spend our time wasting on, we think, you know, whatever, pick something. Because now we have information from the different departments about how they rank these things. And I think it means that we're going to be a much more effective commission. And I'm bowing my head to staff, because I know this document must have taken you hundreds and hundreds of hours to prepare. And I'm so thankful. Thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Move along, Judy.
I don't really have anything. I appreciate all the work putting into this as well. Some of this stuff I'm still trying to digest fully, but it's all good. Thanks, everybody.
Good. Thanks, Judy. Kate.
I also wanted to thank staff for this document. I know how challenging everything has been with the coronavirus, COVID-19, working remotely, and it's really impressive that you guys were able to lead this meeting in such detail and really inform us tonight. I do have one question. If you guys know any insight, it's not like a priority, but I was wondering, the hot topic of this year was going to be the Downtown Development Authority and trying to get that approved by the businesses. How do we expect that to be impacted? Will that probably be put on ice until 2021, or I was just curious.
Hello, I'm back. We're still working through the process to hopefully have council consider whether or not to put it on this November's ballot. I think you raise a good point in terms of the timing of the pandemic is not ideal, but all of the work is continuing as if we would trend toward that consideration by the registered electors in the proposed district in November. So we're still trending toward that, notwithstanding what's going on with the world right now.
That's awesome. Thanks for the update, Brad.
Okay. Noel?
Just also wanted to say a thank you to staff, a great document. And I really did appreciate the pictures. You know, I'm relatively new to Inglewood and I don't know, you know, a lot of the areas around and what some of these things would touch. And so having those in there helped me wrap my head around it that extra little bit. So thank you.
Excellent. Daryl?
Yeah, I just wanted to basically thank staff for giving us information. I've done this, I don't know how many times now, and basically we didn't really have anything to go on. And like was said even last year, you know, we put a bunch of parties out there and, you know, none of them even went forward. So I think this along with the meeting with city council that has not happened yet is a very important step towards making this what it was originally intended to be. So thanks for all the work.
Okay. I guess I'll take the last word tonight. I'll reiterate and give a heartfelt thank you to staff. You've done yeoman's work in creating a tremendous document that not only explains everything, but explains everything in a way that we can all use it, which is important because it's so often easy to get tied up in your own silo and not be able to communicate that. And you've truly done a great job of that. Do look forward to the information. And I would again task commissioners, if you would please take a look at this as it comes forward before the document, before our next agenda comes out. Number two, any questions you have, please direct them through Nancy and Wade, not to each other, because we're not going to have any meetings violations laws. And then we'll get a summary of those questions, if any, and the answers which staff has provided to an individual commissioner along the way. Number three, at our next meeting, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to meet in person because that would be a little bit easier. And even if we have to meet in a community room, et cetera, where we're spread out, that's, I think, just fine. But that's certainly up to the state's orders and the State Department of Public Health, et cetera, as they see fit. In light of that, and perhaps if we don't have that opportunity, I would be prepared to do this meeting and also to be able to come to some conclusion so that we can be of service to council. So I would say that, you know, there's a great number of projects here, and there are great projects, period. Not all of them would we recommend funding, but I think when we think in terms of what are the community's goals, what's in other words, what are the council's goals, what's in our comprehensive plan, and how can we best serve that, okay? So let's look at this holistically, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna probably agree on 80% of it. It's gonna be pretty academic. It's at 20% where at the end of the day, we all voted for it. That wasn't those people didn't and we did, but we all voted for it and we put that forward to the council. So with that, thank you all for being wonderful at tonight's Zoom call. We're about 8 minutes over, which is going to drive me crazy for the rest of the evening, but hey, such is life. Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned, and have a wonderful, safe rest of the week. Bye-bye.
See you guys. Good to see you.
Bye. Have a good night.
Yeah.